Okay, hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide you context in the war in Ukraine. So, the battlefield, it's the same as it's been for the last week. Another record breaking day. It's the fourth or fifth, depending on how you're calculating, 1,740 Russians off the battlefield. What does that mean exactly? Well, let's look at this first. 5 tanks, 12 armored fighting vehicles, 23 artillery systems, 72 vehicles and fuel tanks, all again on like the vehicles and fuel tanks on the high side, tanks on the low side, because this is a meat wave assaults is what it looks like. 1740, and if we look at this chart here, 1740, this was tie with May 13th. Now they don't do ties on this particular kind of chart, so they'll like do 1770, 1770, 3 and 4. The way that I calculate is a little bit differently, where I will put 1740 would be a tie for fourth place here on May 13th and November 30th. That's just the way that I keep track of what's going on. Okay, so it's a high number for casualties for the Russians. Here are losses that Andrew Perpetua could identify, and it looks like it's a pretty good 3-to-1 kind of ratio or something close to that. It was a quiet night in Ukraine for drone attacks. Only 8 were, only 10 Shahed drones. 8 were shot down, but it was quiet comparatively. I mean, it was almost a day off compared to the 100 or more than 100 that between drones and missiles that we've had over the last few days. So since the start of the full-scale invasion in Ukraine, Russia has carried out 1,120 major attacks on the country's energy infrastructure. So it's cold now, and energy is going to be unreliable, and Putin understands that. So he's trying to make the population miserable, as if that's going to cause them to give up. I don't think it will. I think that'll backfire on them and cause them to steal their resolve. There's a principle here, and it's kind of odd. So in martial arts, if you grab somebody's wrist and they pull back, it only steals their resolve. If you push forward, they can't hang on. So I think it's that kind of thing going on where what he thinks is going to cause them to break is only going to bolster their resolve by being miserable. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope that does. Yesterday in occupied Crimea, Ukrainian forces struck 3 Russian radar stations, according to the GUR. One Costa 2E 2 radar destroyed and 2 Podlet radars. And that's different than the day before that, where they hit a Polyot radar system in Crimea valued at $5 million. So the hits keep coming. And here's another update. The Atlas oil depot in the Rostov region has been on fire for 2 days now. So this was a strike just a couple days ago. Nationally, the Russian internet has collapsed. According to Jason J. Smart, banks, delivery services, and telecom operators are not working. Now, he thinks this may be intentional. I don't know. This part is commentary here. The Russian government probably did this to prevent panic from spreading so that people do not take out their bank deposits. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it seems plausible that that might be true. I just don't know. Okay. Seems that YouTube has, now I saw this a couple days ago, but other news got in the way, and I just have to triage and prioritize what I'm showing you here. Seems that YouTube has given in to the demands of the Russian Communications Oversight Service to remove videos about bypassing VPNs, like videos on their network that talk about how to get around VPNs. If users don't delete content, YouTube may block it. So yeah, I mean, I thought YouTube was all about freedom of speech, but maybe not. Zelensky stressed the need for meetings with President-elect Trump to craft his plan for a strong Ukraine. He plans to present ideas for cooperation and address Putin-related challenges in detail. Talks with U.S. Special Representative nominee Keith Kellogg are expected soon. Now, I've talked about Keith Kellogg. I know people were wigging out at first about Keith Kellogg. Well, he's the guy with the bad plan that was talking about disarming Ukraine if they don't come to the table, or giving Ukraine weapons if Russia doesn't come to the table. Okay, so Keith Kellogg, it looks like he's going to be a reasonable pick. And I talked about him. Greg Terry talked about him. Here's Jake Bro talking about him. Trump's pick to be his special envoy and advisor to resolve the war in Ukraine is a brilliant choice. That's Keith Kellogg. The general knows that Pete Hegseth is not qualified and he refuses to say on camera that he is qualified. He just gives a fluff non-answer to avoid saying anything bad about Trump's obviously unqualified pick. This is how I know I can trust this guy for the deal with the Russians. He's not crazy. No, he's not crazy. So Keith Kellogg, this guy here, was Mike Pence. That's the vice president under Trump 4 years ago. He was his national security guy, and so he's been around. 4-star retired lieutenant general. So here's what he had to say in this interview.
General, I'll give you the last word. I want to get your thoughts on the Hegseth nomination and also maybe some insight, should he be confirmed, the environment he's going to enter, having some experience in the Pentagon yourself.
Yeah, look, the Pentagon's a little fired.
So again, the question was, what do you think of Pete Hegseth? And here's how he's answering.
Leviathan, the Defense Department. You took 1.4 million men and women under arms, 750,000 civilians, 34% of the workforce, 750,000 contractors. And you look at all the problems that they've got there, and there needs to be some reform there. There's very clearly reform of programs and policies and people as well. But the Secretary of Defense is also critical. Remember, he's a warfighter too. He's one of the 2 national command authorities. In other words, he's the nuclear command and control chain of command. And he's going to have to manage the wars that are out there as well in the Middle East and the one that's happening in Europe. So it's an enormous, enormous task. But the president gets the call. I've been with the president since 2015-16. He gets to make those calls. And under Article 2, Section 2, the Senate gets to advise and consent, and they'll have those hearings. But it's going to be an enormous task that he's going to fall into. It's going to be a tough job out there because the Defense Department is tough with all of those issues that they've got facing them. And there are issues that need to be corrected. So the president's right there. To me, this would be one of the first targets of DOGE when you've got Elon Musk and Vivek as well. That'd be a good target to start with, is the Defense Department.
So, General, is he the right?
So notice he didn't answer the question. The newscaster is going to ask him again to try to answer the question, and he'll dodge it again, because now what I don't understand is why did Trump appoint someone like Hegseth, a major? I mean, he's no slouch, but he just doesn't have the steps between being a major and being the chair, the Secretary of Defense, where this guy is a retired 4-star general. Someone of this caliber is the kind of person that you want to put in place, in my estimation. But okay, he's going to ask him again.
Man for the job?
Well, that's going to be up to the Senate to make those calls. When you talk about being the right or wrong person for the job, we're just noise level. We just sit here and talk about it. The real people are going to bring that out is the Senate, and they'll have the advice and consent role that they have. But
okay, and so he's spot on. The president gets to choose, and then the Senate has a role constitutionally of advice and consent. That is, that they get to evaluate him and they get to confirm or decide, no, he's not qualified. And that's what'll come of it. It is up to the Senate to be able to do that. But this guy, I think, will be good. He's at least got his head screwed on right. He could turn out wrong, but I think the odds seem to favor that he'll be positive for Ukraine on net. Okay, Institute for the Study of War. Ukrainian forces recently advanced northeast of Vuhledar, and Russian forces advanced in other places as well. Now, here's what it looks like on a battlefield, and these are all Russian attacks on Ukrainian positions. Kherson, 3 unsuccessful attempts. Bakhmut front, 3 attacks. North of Kharkiv, 5 attacks. Kupiansk direction, 7 attacks. Lyman direction, 18 attacks. Ramivka direction, 24 attacks. Pakrovsk direction, 34 attacks. Kharkov direction, 43 attempts to advance. So that's where it's hot. The result of 36 airstrikes yesterday, dropping 61 guided aerial bombs. So the battlefield's hot. So here's Bill Browder making his prediction that the war is not ending anytime soon. And here's why.
My prediction is that it doesn't end. My prediction is that Putin is the key decision maker in this whole thing. He has what I call maximalist approach. He wants Ukraine to basically submit to him. He wants Ukraine to become effectively occupied by Russia. The technicalities are that he wants Ukraine to demilitarize, disband their military, in the hopes that wherever the front line is, stays there. And that's just absurd. In 1994, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in a deal that was signed called the Budapest Memorandum. In exchange for giving up their nuclear weapons, their territorial integrity was supposed to be protected by Russia, by the United Kingdom, and the United States. And then Putin launched the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, abrogating that agreement. And the United States and the United Kingdom didn't go to war to protect Ukraine's territorial integrity. So why should Ukraine then give up its military, who has been very, very effective at fighting off the Russians, in exchange for some promise that Russia won't go any further? I think that that's an absurdity.
What promises has Russia made that you can actually hang your hat on in that regard, right? I mean, like, it does seem to be a bit of an absurdity. They didn't keep their promise before or the time after that, but now they're going to keep their promise? I'm not sure that I would buy that either. Okay, Christmas decorations when you have insane neighbors. Yep, that's what it looks like. 'Tis the season. An unusually agitated Russian soldier who returned from the war opened up saying that no one goes there except for money, and that all the patriotism is complete nonsense, while Ukraine's lands are littered with the bodies of Russians that no one bothers to retrieve. I watched this. I decided after watching it, I wasn't even going to show it. It was just that unsettling. But yeah, he came back after a year of war. Now, at least he came back. Here's the statistics. The average life expectancy of Russian soldiers after conscription is between 2 weeks and a month once they hit the front lines. 2 weeks and a month. He is a survivor, right? And he's going to have some problems moving forward. Okay. The small European country of Luxembourg just announced that it would spend more than 80 million euros to fund domestic Ukrainian arms production. Funds will go toward the procurement of Ukrainian drones, surveillance systems, and electronic warfare systems. So thank you to Luxembourg. And again, drones are the future. Now, this is some next level trolling at the Russian embassy today. Here is a little Ukrainian drone. It's a little toy tank. This is just outside the Russian embassy. I'm not sure even what to think, or what this guy's thinking. If he's wondering if it's going to work or what. Okay, one more thing. This is Darth Putin. On this day, 1939, USSR began to liberate Finland from themselves in the Winter War. It followed denials, a false flag, a BS excuse, deliberately targeting civilians while we took massive casualties we lied about. Imagine all that happening today. Good point. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.